it felt like I was watching somebody else because I didn't know I was doing certain things. I didn't know I was ending up in certain places or positions. Okay, this is no longer serving me. This is no longer serving you. Let's depart in peace. And I couldn't do that before. Unanswered prayers, resentment towards God. Why am I not getting married? What's wrong with me? Everything was so much ingrained in that communal mindset. Therefore, I wasn't able to clearly think of why I was making the decisions I was making. Shame and guilt were no longer part of who I am. And that's pretty much like I woke up from a deep sleep, is what it is. Welcome back to my channel, where beauty meets purpose and transformation begins. This is the second part to how I am reinventing myself in my 30s. On last week's episode, we talked about my story. I talked about how I started reinventing myself. Well, technically, I didn't even know what I was doing, but it was a trauma that kind of led into like a web of discovery, self-discovery, identity, and all that. Today's topic is going to be the second part where I stopped last time, talking about deconstruction. I know, cringe. You've probably heard deconstruction so many times, especially in the Christian community. You've heard it time and time again. In the last 3-4 years since COVID, I think it rocked everybody, where everybody was like, hold up, let me deconstruct. But let me just give you a simple meaning of deconstruction. What is deconstruction? Deconstruction is basically rethinking your ideology, rethinking your religion is the term that was adapted from the original deconstruction term. So that's pretty much what it is. What are some of the misconceptions of deconstruction? Deconstruction is not deconversion. It can lead to deconversion, but it's not deconversion. Like I said, it's pretty much questioning everything you know, everything you've heard so far, everything you've read, and making sure it's actually what it is. It can lead to deconversion. There are people who have critically thought about their religion and then said, hey, this is not for me, and they walked away. Or there are people who go through deconstruction and say, hey, this is how I want to reconstruct. This is what my faith is. Or maybe it is a phase and they are go back to how they were living before. So deconstruction is not deconversion. So let's just get that out of the way. The thing that I kept hearing while I was doing my own deconstruction is that deconstruction is sort of an easy way out. Like, since you don't want to abide by certain rules and certain beliefs, you tend to create this like, oh, I'm deconstructing, and you're trying to like alleviate some pressure from yourself. I don't know, maybe people are doing that. I don't know if that's the thing. I don't think it lasts that long, you know what I mean? If it's like a momentary thing, then I don't think it's gonna, for a long term it won't last. But for me, it wasn't like that. So I don't think most people deconstruct just because they are tired of being a certain way. So this is not just about Christian faith, right? You can deconstruct anything, any societal norm, anything that you've learned so far, and say, is this really what it is? So for me, in this topic is definitely like directly related to my faith and my practices as a Christian that led to kind of like seeing my past and my life choices and question everything that I was doing, because it didn't make sense at the end. When I looked at the results and the things that I was doing, it wasn't matching. So there was a disconnect, and I, instead of saying, oh, it's not because I didn't do this enough, I stopped and said, okay, maybe there is something wrong with how I am approaching my religion, how I'm approaching my relationship with God, but also how I'm approaching my relationship with other people. So that's what I did. So deconstruction, I don't think most people are doing it just for the fun of it. This is how I describe it. It's like you are standing still on a beautiful rug, and that rug is kind of like ripped out of your legs and you basically fall on your face. That's exactly how I felt during the time. So it's not something somebody wants to do out of their way just to create chaos. So my personal journey to deconstruction came, like I said, based on my faith, but it kind of, encompassed everything about me. My faith does mean more than just like me attending religious services every week. It's more so, it shaped how I saw my relationships with people, it shaped how I saw my relationship with my family, or even like my career, my choice in career, why I did what I did. Everything was so much ingrained in that communal mindset. Therefore, I wasn't able to clearly think of why I was making the decisions I was making, down to the partner I chose to marry. So all these things were encompassed to that, and then I just stopped, and like when I was deconstructing, it was just like I was seeing these things, each one individually, to see where I have failed or where I thought I was doing a certain thing, but has resulted in opposite of what I was expecting. So just thinking about every aspect of my life, from self-care, from how I took care of myself, how I viewed myself. Did I actually love myself? My relationship with my family. Do I have certain boundaries that need to be set? My relationship with my friends, all these things. So it opened up, like I said, a can of worms, and that's pretty much how it started. So when I started rethinking all these things, I actually stepped away from myself and looked at it as if I was a third person. Obviously, I was very critical of what I was doing, and I just realized I was deep sleeping in my own life. Like deep sleeping. Everything that I was doing was kind of like programmed. Everything was programmed. There was no, even the choices I thought I was making were not my choices. And it was just like an awakening. I was like, oh my God, everything I've been doing so far. It felt like I was watching somebody else, because I didn't know I was doing certain things. I didn't know I was ending up in certain places or positions that I would say like, oh, I don't want to be like this. I don't want to be like that. But I ended up in those situations, and I was like, okay, where's the disconnect? Because I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to do that, but things kept happening. So what's the miscommunication? And that's pretty much like I woke up from a deep sleep is what it is. When deconstructing, my relationships got, how do I say this? My circle got smaller and smaller and smaller. I thought I was the problem, right? Because the thing is, like, I have to be the problem. And then I was like, no, 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 no. It has to be them, right? It has to be them. But really, it was me. Like, I was no longer the same person. And I was trying to have the same relationships with people that were no longer in the same. I was different. Now, how do you unsee something that you've already seen? And sometimes explaining that to people, some people get it. The ones that do, and the ones that don't, didn't. And that was pretty much what happened. And, the old self, the old BT, the old Sandawa would be like, oh, how do I please them? How do I please these people and still keep the relationship, still keep, that, like, because I'm a peacemaker. I'm always gonna be a peacemaker. So that was gonna be me. So how do I keep these relationships while it was really hard for me to completely be my new self, because my new self had different thoughts on things, and it was just like the conversations were not going. It was not going where it used to, and I was like, I tried, and at the end I was like, okay, I'm sorry, I'm no longer serving you, I'm no longer benefiting you, was my approach. And you know it was scary. I promise, it was so scary. I didn't know I could make those decisions. Okay, this is no longer serving me, this is no longer serving you, let's depart in peace. And I couldn't do that before. Once you see things, you just can't unsee. And some people in your life will get it. They will support you. In fact, maybe you do it together. Maybe you make them think about certain things. They make you think about certain things. And if they're still there, you kind of challenge each other. You talk it out. Those people are gold, right? Like, if you find them, keep them, don't let them go. And then some people, they just can't handle the transformation that happens in your life. Don't be resentful, don't be mad, just let them go. It's just like, don't hold on to things that are no longer serving you. You're no longer serving them. And I didn't know there was a Christian way of parting ways. But then there are multiple examples in the Bible where, you know, Barnabas and Paul, they just went their separate ways, and that's okay. You can be doing the same thing and just not having the same vision for your life, the same purpose. And so, you know, hasta la vista, with love, hasta la vista. No cap, no cap. I don't think anybody attended church more than me. Especially like the last maybe 5, 6 years. I would go to church 3 times on Sunday. Like I would teach maybe twice and go to another service at the end, or some in between. Church was my life. Everything I did was actually like an outlet for my job that I didn't like. So because I didn't like my job, it was kind of like a relief place where, like, you know, because I spent majority of my free time in ministry or in church, it was like my way out of like my job at the time that I didn't like. I attended a lot of church. This part right here, you might relate. Week after week, Sunday afternoon, I would go to church and I would, you know, get rejuvenated. You know, maybe get scared into like, oh, you know, I'm not giving God enough time. I'm not reading the Bible enough. I'm not praying enough, whatever. And then, you know, I get like, okay, Holy Spirit, okay, God, help me. And then I'm praying, crying Sunday night. And then Monday comes, like some of the energy still there. Tuesday, by Wednesday, like I'm back to my normal life. By normal life, I mean like my day to day. I have probably gotten into like, you know, doing normal life stuff. And so that like energy boost, like an energy shot, right? It has probably like getting low, and it's Thursday, and then you come Friday to another church service. Saturday comes, Sunday, you get rejuvenated again. This kept going week after week after week after week. Yet I was still feeling guilty. I was still feeling like I wasn't good enough. I still felt like I didn't give God enough time. I still felt like I wasn't a good enough Christian. I pushed myself over and over and over again to be this like perfect person. I covered myself with church things and church stuff, right? To mask the mess that was inside. Unanswered prayers, resentment towards God. Why am I not getting married? What's wrong with me? Da 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 da. And you know, like I said, the church, like community, the people around me told me, you know, you're not like the typical person. You know, you're too intimidating. You're too this. You're too that. All those things were like harbored inside, and then on the outside, I am doing all churchy holy things, you know, but like the guilt and the shame kept going and going and going and going. There was no actual transformation, and I've been in church like my whole life. I don't think any of that time was wasted. I thank God for every day, for every time I spent in his house. I don't think my approach to it was right. I don't think my approach to doing those things was correct, because I wasn't seeing the fruit that I needed to see. I wasn't living. I was going to church, but I wasn't living. There's a difference. If you are a light, right? If you are a light, you should be a light to everybody around you, not just church people. How are you a light if you are always around light? I don't get it. Like, I don't get it. That's where I'm at right now. I'm like, there's no way. How am I supposed to light and be a light in darkness if my, you know, if my relationships with non-believers is considered, oh, unequally yoked, and if my relationships with people outside of my faith is a distraction, and that I should, you know, always, you know, try to stay pure. We're always in this defense mode. How do I keep myself pure? How do I keep myself? Yet the gospel is completely different than what that is. I just stopped and I was like, okay, this ain't it. As much as I want to say that the God I met in my childhood and my maybe 2, 3 decades that I've learned so far is a God that's loving, that wasn't the truth. I honestly was always in work mode. and I would read the Bible or I would listen to a preaching and it would say, no, it's by grace alone, but it was detached. I was always working. I was always going to be working. And maybe the culture that I grew up in had an influence in how I approached my relationship with God, and maybe that's something to consider. But I could never see the loving God more than once a week. The 7 days a week was that like very strict, very, ready to punish me. And let's say I get into a car accident. Let's say I bump into somebody, whatever. It was because I wasn't good enough. It was because I didn't pray that morning. Can you imagine? Like, I know people who say it's because I didn't pray that morning that this happened to me. Like, this is superstitious. This is not the faith that I wanted with God. And I knew this in my mind, but my practice, and this is what I'm saying, what I was feeling is cognitive dissonance, which is basically what my values and my thoughts were not aligning with my actions. So I was just like feeling incompetent. So my behavior was not aligning with the values and beliefs that I had. The way I approached God, my spiritual practices needed a revamp there. It was always this like transactional relationship. I would give money, right? I would give money, let's say, for a homeless person on the street. And there's something in my head that says, yeah, I'm gonna expect something from God. Good is about to happen. There was never like, I am transformed and this is who I am. This is somebody who knows God and who has practiced and seen God. This is the type of behavior they have. It was always transactional. And hey, if you're not there, if you were never there, good for you. Honestly, I'm jealous, but I could never get out of that mentality. But this is my truth, this is my experience, this is what I saw growing up, and it didn't sit well with me. I would go to God with the most difficult and ugliest conversations. And you're like, oh, you didn't know you could do that? Yeah, I knew I could do that. I would do it for maybe one day. And then when God has given me like a grace or something good or whatever, I feel like I go back to that like default mode of transactional. But this time I continually did it. I continually went to God with all the mess, with all the ugly stuff, with all the nasty stuff. I just went to God and I said, here it is. Do what you will. Here it is. And until I did that, I didn't even start healing from my divorce trauma. That was what set me like a step forward, maybe even 10 steps forward. Shame and guilt were no longer part of who I am. And doesn't matter what kind of day I had, doesn't matter what kind of mood I was in, shame and guilt were just not invited. I would say, nope, I am not clean, I am not perfect, I am not good enough. You already have done that for me. You've already been clean, you've already done that for me. This is what I'm going through. And I'm gonna struggle. As long as I live in this world, as long as I'm living in this broken world, I'm gonna stay broken. But I know that I can approach you and I know you can take my brokenness and I know you can fix it. And some of it is gonna take years to be fixed. Some of it is gonna be at the end. But I know all things work together for good for me. All together for good. All together means it's not now, right? There's no end time. There's no, this is okay, it already worked for me. No, it will, right? It's in the future. So that's my approach. I no longer entertain conversations with the enemy of, you did this, you did that, you're not this, it's just not happening anymore. And so that kind of opened up back like an honest, raw relationship with God. This was a different one, a different relationship, because the first one was very much performative. And this one is like, this is what it is, God. And, He gives grace. Honestly, God gives grace. There's one thing I always say, even to my friends and my siblings. God is not afraid of your question. He's not. You think like me, my itty bitty little questions is gonna be like, oh, I didn't think of that question. How did she come up with that? Oh, I'm scared. You think God says that? No. He knows everything. He created everything. Therefore, I'm like, no. If there's a question, I'm gonna ask it. And I'm gonna ask him. But this like fear mentality, no, you shouldn't ask this question today. No. You shouldn't ask these. Yeah, I'm gonna ask them. And I may not get answers. I may not, be satisfied with the response even. I might even get answers that I don't like. But I'm gonna ask questions because God wants me, and this is not anybody else, me, to serve him, knowing him. Not, oh, I guess this is what everybody is doing. Oh, I see, oh yeah, I see my brother, oh, I see everybody approaching him this way, this is how I should approach him. No, I'm unique, I'm beautifully and wonderfully made, and there's nobody that has the same DNA as me in this 7-8 billion. So I'm gonna approach God the way I approach him, and no fear is gonna stand between me and the Holy Father. This is gonna start a lot of conversations, but if you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you want me to dive deep more, or if anything comes up after this video, please do comment and let me know. As always, I am so grateful for your time, so grateful that you have dedicated your time to watch my video. Please share and subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you. Toodoo!